Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Semoto Podcast. With me tonight, Ben Whittle from Token Architecture, one of the Semoto members for our ecosystem, an expert in tokenomics. Welcome, Ben.
Hi, Marco. Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
How's it going? All good?
Yeah, all good here.
Awesome. Thanks again
Yeah,
for.
busy with a lot of client
Yeah,
business, but
that's a great
all good.
problem to have. Good for you. So, Ben, tell us about yourself. Tell us a bit about your journey first. What brought you into the crazy world of digital assets?
Sure. So I've been working professionally in crypto for about 6 years now. First became aware of it, I think actually in 2014, 2015, whilst I was a student, um, sort of post Euro sovereign debt crisis, and was learning about Austrian economics and kind of went down that rabbit hole. Ultimately went down the kind of gold and silver and precious metals route, but was sort of tangentially aware of Bitcoin at that point. For whatever reason, didn't really jump down the rabbit hole completely, and then became aware of it a few years later in 2017. So I began investing. And then after a year of investing and doing a bit of trading, I decided to try and sort of make a career out of crypto at that point. Not being an engineer, trying to find a full-time career at that point in the industry was a little bit tricky, at least as a graduate with no kind of formal experience, especially with the bear market that then came immediately after. But I worked as a contractor and a freelancer doing a combination of research and writing roles at a few different firms, but ended up at Smith and Crown at the beginning of 2020. I was there for about 3 years. So Smith and Crown is actually one of the oldest research companies in the industry. They're founded in 2014. Um, they focus on research in crypto economics, doing design for companies. So I worked there originally as an analyst and then as a research lead and internally co-led their investment division. So we did private investment research and also invested in liquid tokens. And towards the final year of my time there, I was focused on the crypto economics side of the business. So it's designing educational seminars and modules for clients, and also led a design team towards the end of my tenure there. So designing token economies and crypto economic designs for clients. Then left Smith and Crown just over a year ago now, about 18 months ago. Took some time off, having been slightly burnt out by 5 years full time in the industry, and then decided to set up Token Architecture almost a full year ago at this point now. So Token Architecture is a crypto economic design agency. So we develop economic designs for blockchain companies and projects from the bottom up. We also do reviews and audits of existing designs. And it's predominantly myself there. I do have two former colleagues who help me at Token Architecture as well. And then in parallel to Token Architecture, we have a non-profit research group called Just Crypto Economics that produces and disseminates non-profit and open access crypto economics research pieces
Interesting.
for the
Let's
general
let's
public.
split the
So those are
two.
kind of the two hats that I wear.
Let's split the two because I think there is quite a lot to cover. So tell us a little bit more first about token architecture. And by the way, I love the name. Sometimes, particularly in digital assets, you deal with companies and you're never sure what the hell they do. The name couldn't be more clear. It's a great name. Well done on picking that one up. So let's focus on token architecture. What do you guys specialize on? How do you operate?
Yeah, so we focus on crypto economic design, and we differentiate crypto economics from tokenomics. In the way we see the industry, tokenomics is really just focused predominantly on the token design, and often within that, there's a particular focus on kind of allocation models and designs, which is obviously like a fairly narrow part of the practice. For us, crypto economics includes the entire design suite of token economies, but it also includes all of the on-chain as well as some of the off-chain economic design considerations for projects. So that could involve like resource pricing, whether it's computer storage or other kind of tokenized digital assets that don't include the native token, like for instance, digital land, instance of like a metaverse game, as well as kind of pricing structures and anything else that's kind of economically related. We also include governance design under crypto economics. So that's probably how we are different from the majority of tokenomic shops. In our
Tell
view,
us
what we do is
more
like quite a bit
on
different
that.
and broader.
Because I do agree with you. I mean, not many other agencies, not many other shops focus on that. So tell our audience exactly what it is, what does that imply?
Yeah, so for us, tokenomics is really just to do with the native token. So if you're a project issuing a native token, or perhaps you have a dual token model, the tokenomics part of that work is going to focus on just that sole token, whereas economic design has to focus on the entire economic toolset. So that can include, on-chain resources like bandwidth, compute, storage. It can even include like the consensus mechanism if we're talking about layer ones or middleware. And if it's higher level consumer facing applications, then there might be off-chain economic considerations to do with, real world digital assets and tokenization, for instance, and how that data is relayed to the on-chain layer. So a crypto-economic practitioner, at least the way we see the industry, has to be kind of equipped to deal with all those parts of the stack, not just the native token.
You're so right, and we've seen so many projects that off-chain elements are not even considered at all. Well, as you said, they do affect the token, they do affect your project, and you cannot just remove them completely from the equation. It's something that you need to be careful about. Okay, and before we dig deeper into the tokenomics element, tell us a bit about the research angle. It's quite interesting. So what do you do in that space?
Yeah, so all our research is published for free. There's no payment or gating. We three of us work on it in our spare time. Um, and yeah, so we launched about 9 months ago with a foundational series of articles on crypto economics, basically laying out crypto economics as a field, the different constituent parts of it, the different modules as we see it. And then we also laid out the history of crypto economics, the present state of this part of the industry, and the kind of future of the industry as we'd like to see it. And right now we're working on more specialized pieces, particularly around kind of airdrops, points programs, and then one of the team is working or looking at kind of different modeling frameworks for crypto economics. So our initial kind of series of articles were fairly high level, but trying to ground the subject matter. And at the moment, working kind of more specialized pieces.
And
But yeah,
I'm a
two
big
colleagues at just crypto economics.
thanks, and I'm a
Mhm.
big fan of education in general. I love when people like yourself put out research to contribute to the whole ecosystem. Bit of self-promotion. One of the functionality in Semoto is for provider to publish as much material as possible because that can bring education to the users, the different clients that can find a lot of free resources, but more importantly, it gives visibility to the experts that are producing those pieces of resources. So a lot of the stuff that Ben mentioned can also be found on Semoto. Tell me more about the non-profit angle, Ben. You were saying that the research part as a non-profit angle. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so we probably more, it is a non-profit, it's a non-commercial entity, but more specifically, our sort of modus operandi is producing open access research. So there's no paywall now or in the future with any of our research. There's no advertising, there's no vested interest. Um, Specifically, it's set up as a non-profit
Yeah.
entity in the UK, so there's no shareholders or anything like that. And there's three of us who work at Just Growth Economics. So there's myself, and then my colleagues Hugo and Justin, who were both at Smith and Crown as well. So that's how the three of us know each other. Hugo is currently a DAO specialist at Lemma Solutions. So he works on DAO frameworks and a lot of the kind of off-chain legal considerations for DAOs. And Justin's a crypto economics research analyst at Wormhole Foundation, the interoperability layer. So there's three of us that just crypto economics.
Give us a bit of color, Ben, about the token architecture clients. Who are the type of people that you deal with? At what stage do you find that they tend to approach you? Do you take in early stage or already well established that are planning to launch a token? What's the sweet spot for you guys?
Yeah, there is a range. We were current and recent client list would include projects who are actually looking at their first fundraising round, and they're looking to just kind of get the basics of a token economy in place to be able to put in front of investors, so they can understand what the instrument that they're actually investing in is and how it's going to differ from an equity structure. And most importantly, how the token could accrue value in the future. And then we also work with much more advanced projects who are already kind of up and running with an application or some degree of product market fit, and are looking for maybe a second sale event or they're just kind of bigger in scale. We've also spoken with existing quite large SMEs as well who are looking to move into the space. That's a very different type of client, and there's a whole the kind of, the set of negotiations that go on there is a little bit different, and there's just a whole different kind of
Are you
set of
referring to more
considerations.
Web2
Um,
traditional businesses that are moving into the space?
yeah, exactly. So they're kind of crypto adjacent or crypto curious, you might say, and looking to kind of introduce a native token into their business model,
Gotcha.
as well as like other parts of sort of Web3 technologies as well.
Have you seen any specific pattern in between the type of Web2 clients? Like, do you see more logistic, transportation, food and beverage, or at the moment is well diversified?
It's pretty broad, to be totally honest with you. We've seen logistics marketplaces, seen carbon credits and agricultural projects from kind of non-crypto backgrounds, commodities tokenization as well. So yeah, it's a pretty broad
Interesting.
range. Industrial tooling as well. There really is no one sector. Like what we do is already relatively niche. So focusing on a specific vertical for crypto economic design is, from a pure business perspective, is a little bit tough. So there's not many verticals or sectors we haven't spoken to or would be prepared to work with.
Interesting. Okay. I have to ask you, I mean, obviously in Semoto we have other token experts and they're all viable, they're all solid providers. We vet everyone. But what makes you guys different? If you have to pitch to a client, I mean, where is the differentiation with the token architecture?
Yes, I think the first thing is like what we practice is quite different to tokenomics. So as mentioned earlier, like our focus is on crypto economic design. And so practically what that means is taking a really holistic design philosophy to a project that goes well beyond just the token. So it includes obviously the entire token economy, whether that's token utility and rights, supply and rewards, allocation and distribution, all the stuff you'd kind of expect from a tokenomics design agency. But it does go significantly beyond that. It can include actual kind of technical re-architecting, as we've been doing for a client recently. It includes the entire governance set of parameters. So we design governance systems from the bottom up, including but not limited to the token, as well as all those other kind of economic considerations, whether they're on or off chain, predominantly on chain, admittedly, but we do consider kind of off chain economic considerations as well. And then also like the breadth of expertise that we bring. So my colleagues at Just Crypto Economics also work with me at token architecture. So they all have a set of different experiences. And then personally, my experience at Smith and Crown, which was it was the oldest crypto economics design agency in the industry. And so the experience and the mentorship I was given there was invaluable, obviously. And then I have a particular focus and historical experience with investing. So kind of understanding how tokens can accrue value and how that can be accommodated when it comes to the utility and rights associated with the token.
Gotcha.
So those are probably just some of the edges that we may have versus some of the competition. Not in any way to say that competitors don't have those particular skill sets, but those are some of the skills and experiences that we bring.
Thanks for that. Let's try to give some practical advice to our audience. If I'm planning to launch a token, what should I consider? Try to give us a clear roadmap of some of the key elements in designing token economics that I should prepare even before approaching somebody like you, or that I should have clear in my mind that I want to address.
Yeah, I mean, candidly, there's quite a lot of considerations. So we'll try and highlight some of the most important ones. So first of all is actually having a clear motivation for introducing a token into your business model or your product stack that goes beyond just fundraising or bootstrapping a community. But there has to be a clear fit for the token in terms of utility. And for us, we'd go even further than that and say that governance utility in and of itself is not sufficient. We're relatively skeptical about the long-term value of governance utility in itself. So beyond governance, there has to be a clear utility for the token. So that's step one. Step two is really trying to get some minimal viable product into the market before you have a token. Like a good token design and a good cryptoeconomic design ultimately isn't a fix for poor or non-existent product market fit. So making sure that the core product loops are well defined, tested, and calibrated before thinking about token is something I would emphasize. And then thirdly, just making sure that you've got the correct infrastructure and support in place. So obviously that would be us or some other agency to do the cryptoeconomic design work, but you're also going to have the legal infrastructure in place. So bringing on counsel to decide which jurisdiction you're going to be setting up your relevant entities in and where you're going to be issuing the token from is incredibly important. And then down the line, thinking about kind of software development when it comes to the implementation side, as well as smart contract auditing as well. So making sure that you've got that auxiliary infrastructure in place for the token launch is incredibly important.
Thanks for that. And it all resonates extremely well. The 3 points are something that we experience as well at Semoto. We see a variety of clients approaching us looking for experts like yourself or other solution from legal to taxation. When then you look or discuss with them and it comes to token, the common issue is you really need a token or just a vehicle to raise assets. And also is quite concerning how many of these projects don't take into consideration the legal aspects of it. The token might make sense, but where are you going to launch it? So we always push to find token experts like yourself in combination with dealing with the lawyers that we have listed on Semoto. Have a chat with people in Dubai, in Europe, in BVI, get a feeling of what is the right suitable jurisdiction for what you're trying to achieve. Because as you know better than me, each jurisdiction is going to make a completely different, is going to affect the cost, is going to affect the timing of launching the token and a lot of other things. But more importantly, I think you're right when you say even a good token that can help you raising is not going to replace some intrinsic issue with product market fit or if the project itself is going to be a success. So focus on the project and the token can come at a slightly later stage. When it comes to jurisdiction to launch the token, do you guys have a preference yourself? Do you see a major difference between a utility or a security token where you launch?
So we try to avoid giving explicit legal or any advice that can be interpreted as legal advice to our clients. And we do provide them with kind of supplementary research material to help them make those decisions. But we're not going to give explicit advice in that area. And always make sure that they're speaking to or are at least prepared to start speaking with lawyers in the relative near term before beginning working with us. Because the last thing we want is the client to spend money with us without having a clear sense of where they're going to be issuing the token and then run into delays or unnecessary expenses. So we always try to make sure that they've thought that through before they come to us and they sign any contracts.
I love
short term, probably not in our financial interests, but
completely correct answer. I love the politically correct answer. But statistically, let's say, have you seen more token selecting a specific jurisdiction or not really? You see them quite spread across Europe, offshore, and other jurisdictions?
I'd say the majority of projects we speak to are probably thinking about BVI and Cayman above anything else, because it's kind of the most, well, again, I don't want to give anything that could be interpreted as legal advice, but it has been interpreted as more permissive versus other regulatory environments, and potentially a bit cheaper.
Exactly. No, I didn't want to push you
yeah,
into giving any advice. We are saying the same, to be honest. I mean, it's not legal advice whatsoever. It's just that a lot of tokens are going there for maybe the nature of what they're doing. But exactly as you said, each project is different. So seek legal advice before moving forward. Okay, so you told us some of the elements that clients should consider before launching a token. When it comes to what are the main elements that affect the life of a token, when it comes to the tokenomics per se, is more about the burning mechanism. There are some of the elements that should be clear in the minds of our clients. What what are the main 3 points that everyone has to consider when structuring the economy behind the token?
Yes, I can talk about the areas of work that we would focus on that are exclusive to the token rather than those kind of broader economic parts of our work.
Please.
When it comes to the token specifically, the first and most important thing is defining the set of utilities and rights associated with the token. So utility is just like, how do I, as a token holder, interact or use the token, whether that's to access services or to be able to perform work, somewhat analogous to a taxi medallion, or if it's used for discounts or for payments or for governance. And then rights is related to utilities, but rights is slightly different in that it speaks specifically to the set of rights, whether those are hard coded or kind of through a social contract that I receive as the token holder. So that could be like a right to a dividend, for instance, or a right to a distribution of assets in the event of a DAO being dissolved, for instance. So token utilities and rights are the first and most important set of considerations. Then the next area that we would work on with a client would be the supply and rewards model. So what's the overall supply model of the token? Is it static, inflationary, disinflationary, deflationary, or dynamic? Those are kind of the most common models that we would use and speak to. And then what's the reward structure and logic there? So what are the different participants involved in the system and how are they getting rewarded with the token? For what behaviors at what ratios, what formulas, etc. After that, you're looking at allocation and distribution. So the initial TGE, how is that supply of the token getting allocated to different stakeholder groups? And then what kind of vesting and lockup schedules there? What do they look like? And then distribution refers to how you're getting tokens into the hands of the token holders, whether that's through a private sale, public sale, airdrops, work drops, lock drops, any other kind of relevant mechanism there, liquidity pools, etc. So those are kind of the main areas of like tokenomics or token economics, which is just one part of the work that we do.
Thanks for that. Regarding the vesting, because that is always a hot topic, because both tokenomic experts like yourself and people with a bit of knowledge try to advise projects to obviously protect the token, protect the project, trying to have a solid vesting schedule. On the other hand, particularly in times like this one, where it's harder to raise, investors dictate the rule of the game and they try hard to push the project to reduce vesting periods and things like that. How do you find a balance between the two? What do you generally advise your clients on?
So generally speaking, like kind of shorter or more frequent release schedules are better. So the research is like relatively clear. The release schedules that have a higher frequency, so think daily or weekly versus monthly or quarterly, have less impact on price volatility, which ultimately is going to be kind of to the long-term benefit of the ecosystem. But also just making sure that in general that your vesting schedule is going to line up with expected demand over the long term. Those are kind of just some of the considerations. I will just say, as like a kind of industry aside, when people think of like tokenomics or what we do, which is growth economics, they will think of these things like vesting and lockups as the most important decisions. For us, it's probably less than 5% of the work that we do. And actually, it's like one of the easiest parts of the work, ironically. So actually getting the token economy calibrated properly in terms of the different participant types and what they're using the token for is actually a much larger part of the work that we do. But that's just kind of a tangential point that I wanted to highlight.
Interesting, thanks. Let's keep going with more practical advice, and I think people respond well to other people's mistakes and errors. So tell us the top 3 that you have seen people making when launching, creating tokens. 3 common mistakes, and please feel free to give us some, without disclosing any name, but some horror stories that you have seen in past.
So I mean, I think in terms of crypto economic horror stories, but nothing is worse than Terra Luna in terms of a blow up. And that really speaks to like the crypto economic part of the design rather than the token specifically, and kind of the off-chain, on-chain economic logic that ultimately led to its demise, and just like fundamental design flaws with its architecture. So that's probably the most catastrophic example of a blow up of a token that was downstream from poor crypto economic design. And that topic has been labored to death within the industry, so I won't pontificate on that too much more.
When you
Beyond
tell
that,
us
though, I think in terms of
exactly,
design,
give us more on smaller project, not that well known, but the the mistake that the average Joe does when they go for cheap solution, quick solution, almost off the shelf type of tokenomic solution. What are the common mistakes that you have seen people doing?
I think candidly, just not thinking fundamentally or deeply about the utility and rights of the token, and just running with the idea that governance utility in itself is sufficient. That's unfortunately a very common attitude within the industry. You see it frequently in kind of DeFi-based projects, but it's a more broader problem. In our view, like if you look at equity markets, for instance, assets with stronger governance rights typically command pretty insignificant additional premium versus those equities with weaker governance rights. And kind of speaks to the idea that like governance utility in and of itself doesn't confer significant value for the holder. The industry, I think, is still catching up with that reality. And I think projects that haven't really gone beyond governance utility are going to really pay the price for that in the years ahead. So thinking at like a deep level, what utility the token can bring to the ecosystem in a kind of positive sense is incredibly important. You don't want to insert utility for the sake of inserting it. Like you never want to undermine the user experience for the general user by inserting a token where it shouldn't exist. But finding complementary and symbiotic design loops for the token is incredibly important.
Amazing. Thanks a lot for that. I think it's really good advice. Um, Unfortunately, and we were discussing something similar in a previous podcast, with the advent of artificial intelligence and with more agency entering the space, we see one of the biggest issue, people selling ready-made solution for tokenomics, and I don't think that clients truly understand how painful can it be for their project to go for those solutions. Saving few bucks at the beginning can cost them great headaches at a later stage because each project is different.
Yeah.
There is not a solution that fit them all.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you really need someone to approach the project from every angle and understand all the different types of participants that are expected to interact with the system, what all the different attack vectors are, before you can begin to build a holistic token economy from the bottom up. Like if your project is extremely similar to an existing successful project with a validated token economy, it's maybe not the riskiest thing in the world to kind of calibrate your token economy based on that. But if that's not the case, then I think either becoming an expert yourself or bringing in third-party experts is always highly advisable. It doesn't necessarily need to be incredibly expensive. There's also like the other thing I would add, and I'm sure it applies to our competitors as well, is that most design agencies are willing to kind of be flexible when it comes to pricing structures and will accommodate kind of more cash-based or more token-based payment structures depending on where the project is in its life cycle. You know, if they're cash strapped, most design agencies, including ourselves, are happy to do kind of predominantly token-based deals. And we can be pretty creative and inventive in terms of structuring in a way that makes sense for both sides. So it doesn't need to cost a fortune to bring in third parties.
No, I completely agree. And the cost of then running for a solution, a patch to a problem can be way more expensive than spending a bit of money at the beginning with true experts. And this is what Semoto is trying to do for the whole industry. Put you people, the true experts, in front of clients at the right time, vouching for the experience you bring on the table, so they avoid to make mistakes and having to find solution at a later stage. So we can leave our audience with this piece of information. Where are our clients going to be able to find you next? Are you going to any conference? Are you presenting at an event?
As we don't have anything coming up in the short term, we were at ECC a couple of months ago. We were considering being at Token 2049, but it's not going to work out this time. We're just too busy with client business at the moment, unfortunately, to make it work. There's a chance we make it to DevCon in Thailand in November, but TBC at the moment. But if people want to find out more about what we're up to, then just our website and socials are probably the best places to find us.
Absolutely. What I'm going to make sure, obviously, under the podcast, you are going to see the link to Ben profile, token architecture profile into Semoto. So via Semoto, you can easily negotiate with Ben, provide him all the information that you need, and get a quick quote. Together with Ben, you can easily combine his expertise with the law firms that can set you up in some of the jurisdiction we mentioned before, together also with the auditor and a few other players that can really complete the suite of tools that you will need to launch a token. Ben, thank you so much. Thanks a lot for your time. Thanks for being a valuable member of the Semoto community. And to all our audience, please get in touch with Ben.
Thank you, Marco. It was a pleasure.
Bye. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay. I think we stopped it. Let's have a look. I'll need to cut this one because it's still recording. For some reason, it's not stopping, but don't worry about that.